Graffiti's the only art form that people do it, even if they're might go to prison for it, or...
It caught people's attention. It really horrified. Each year throws up yet another strange and wondrous case concerning the shirt. I mean, a couple of years ago you had a woman who attacked a display that was showing the designs.
Just because art is art doesn't mean that it's a right that's absolute. Art can be insulting and it can be offensive. And when these people are whining, claiming victims...
In the beginning, there was an explosion that filled an impossible void. And then there were planets that defined something from the nothingness. Then came life. First minute, then large and cumbersome, and then man. And man had to learn to survive, to make fire, to find purpose in existence itself. And once all that was sorted out, man learned to get annoyed about stuff. So this is a podcast about some controversies. Not the big political controversies, not corporate espionage or fraud. No, none of that. Controversies you may not even have known happened, or how weird they were. So join Andy Smith on a 5-part miniseries delving into little controversies in different aspects of our media. In this episode, we look at imagery and get the lowdown on the sometimes illegal and sometimes filthy minds that create it. And just a warning here, folks, if you are easily offended, this episode is particularly spiky. You have been warned. I was in London not too long ago having a wander, thinking about how to frame this episode. I knew I wanted to do it on imagery, but I just didn't quite know where to go with it. And as I was walking along, I stumbled across a couple of guys graffitiing a wall, and it was too good an opportunity to miss, so I wandered over. One of them eyed me suspiciously, then went back to his spraying, ignoring me. The other, larger fella, met my eye, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind doing a little impromptu interview about what he was doing and why.
What would you rather not say?
It's Tizer.
How long have you been doing this for, Tizer?
30 years.
Is this a legal wall, or is it, how does...
Well, not really. It's not really a legal wall, but it's been painted lots of times, so we're painting graffiti on graffiti, so it's...
Make it better than it was, or is it like you can just...
Well, that's the whole point of it. I mean, it depends what you're into, but that's the whole point of graffiti, is to make your environment look better. And that's, like any art, is debatable on what you like or what you don't like.
Yeah,
Graffiti
okay.
divides.
So
It's a love it or hate it
run
thing.
into opposition
It's
or
so
someone saying
visual,
something
so
about what you
obvious, you can't ignore it. And like so much imagery, it's a split-second decision. With a book, you need to read it and digest it. With a movie, you need to watch it. But imagery is so much more efficient than that. It can offend in a second. I find Tizer's work pleasing. It makes a drab wall a hell of a lot less drab. But others no doubt would not agree. To some, graffiti is nothing short of vandalism. And let's face it, you can see their point. As much as I like what I saw Tizer doing, and so much other graffiti, I am less pleased when I see a massive penis spray painted on a wall. I suppose the distinction is that that is just vandalism in my mind, without any artistic merit. But then, who am I to judge what is and isn't art?
So have you ever sort of run into opposition or someone saying, don't do that, or we don't like
of
that?
Course. I mean, most people like graffiti, so, you know, there's only a very few amounts of people that don't like it. It's mostly kind of ex-punks that hate it, you know what I mean? People who kind of conformed, you know. It's the only art form that was ever made up by children, so it's going to annoy people, and it's supposed to. But you know, it's the only kind of real art form there is. Most people who do fine art do it for monetary gains, unless they're just an artist and they do it for the love of it.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
But we can't deny that it is illegal. In the UK, the maximum penalty is 10 years in prison. You get half of that for actual bodily harm. You only get 7 for dealing heroin. Now, to be clear, people aren't really going down for 10 years for some tagging, but they are going down. In 2013, 32-year-old Christian Holmes, property surveyor by day, graffiti artist by night, was sentenced to 3.5 years' time for graffitiing trains over the course of 7 years. There have been plenty of others, so surely that must weigh on the mind.
You know?
Okay.
And graffiti's the only art form that people do it, even if they're might go to prison for it, or you know, it's.
Does that ever put you off?
What, going to prison?
Well, the risk attached to doing it.
Oh yeah, of course, but you know, I mean, I never looked at graffiti as being bad. It's young people need to rebel, and that's a positive way of doing it. You know, at least you're learning techniques and things.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
After I had turned off the recorder and moved down the street a little, Tizer, probably not his real name, shouted after me, "Did I answer your questions correctly?" On the spot, I replied, "There's no right answer." Looking back, I think I could have come up with a witty retort, but I walked away not really knowing what I thought about it all. As I said, I enjoy graffiti when I enjoy it. Other times, not so much. But I do have the ability to enjoy it, and according to a 2014 YouGov poll, I'm not alone. In answer to the question, is all graffiti vandalism? 34% said yes, all graffiti was vandalism. 2% said no, all graffiti was acceptable. The inevitable but mystifying and ever-present 6% were don't knows, and the majority, 58%, said some was acceptable. And perhaps that's what I, and the majority of my fellow Brits, have a problem with. We're happy enough to see some of the glorious, creative, vibrant street art out there, but we aren't too happy about seeing a massive spurting cock on the side of Tesco. Because graffiti is imagery that is forced into the public space. It's not the only controversial art, far from it, but when it's in galleries, we have to choose to go in there and look. So I started looking at controversial artwork, and one name kept coming up again and again. Piss Christ.
A controversial piece of artwork, I hesitate to call it that, but we'll proceed, is back in New York City. It's on display. Andre Serrano's Piss Christ depicts Christ hanging a crucifix submerged in the artist's urine. President Obama has condemned a YouTube video disrespecting Muhammad, but has remained silent on this artwork, insulting millions of Christians around the country. Are some religions more, deserving of sensitivity and sensibility than others?
That was Lou Dobbs introducing a segment on his Fox Business program. Piss Christ sounds like the name of a Cradle of Filth song, but it's not. Not yet, anyway. It's a piece of art that has upset many people for many years.
So people say to me, well, why don't you get over it? Well, I ask people, if you took, in fact, a picture of your own mother and put her in a jar of urine, should that be understood as a love letter? They wouldn't let me into the gallery last night. I wanted to ask Serrano, what about my art? See, I'm an artist also, maybe a different kind of artist. And I brought in here, this is an example. The secularists don't have any religion. So their religion is liberalism. This is their president, okay? President Obama. I have a jar too. This isn't a jar of feces. Well, let me see. Let me just check it. Yeah, let me just check. No, it doesn't have any smell to it. You know what it is? It's brown Play-Doh. But they got the point, okay?
That was Bill Donahue, the Catholic League's president, outraged that the artwork, I'll call it that at least, received funding, and that President at the time, Obama, did not intervene in its display, while he had objected to a YouTube video that slammed Muhammad.
Why can't I get a grant too? If you control for inflation, this has got to be worth at least 50 grand today. If he got 15, why can't I get 50?
In Buenos Aires in 2014, an exhibition of Ken and Barbie dolls dressed up to represent religious figures, including a crucified Jesus Ken, was cancelled following pressure from Catholic and Hindu groups.
Camilla Larici, special for USA Today, October 25th, 2015. Buenos Aires. An artistic showcase featuring 33 Barbie and Ken dolls as religious figures, including a crucified Jesus Christ and a Virgin Mary, is sparking controversy in this Argentine capital and worldwide, a year after the same event was cancelled over death and other threats. The exhibit, Barbie, the Plastic Religion, has infuriated religious organisations globally, especially Catholic ones in Buenos Aires, Pope Francis's birthplace. Barbie and Ken have offered for decades a model of a couple that attracts children of every age to play with them and identify with them, said Adrian Santarelli, a priest at St. Thomas More Parish in Buenos Aires. The idea of dressing dolls with sacred images of sacred persons alters and damages the child's levels of understanding of the sacred. Could we consider normal that a child prays to Barbie? He added.
And let's not forget Cosimo Cavallero's My Sweet Lord.
The problem with the sculpture is when you look at everything put together. This is a life-size statue of Jesus made out of chocolate, entirely naked with genitals exposed. being displayed in a prominent New York hotel on 47th and Lexington on the first floor with windows visible to the street. Any child walking by with his mother can see it during Holy Week. I mean, this is absolutely absurd that they are choosing to assault Christians at this time.
Just because art is art doesn't mean that it's a right that's absolute. Art can be insulting and it can be offensive. And when these people are
Kira McCaffrey, Director of Communications for the Catholic League, talking to the Associated Press in 2007, followed by Bill Donahue again, without a jar of feces this time, talking to CNN in 2008.
Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and non-sectarian organizations to boycott the Roger Smith Hotel. They're morally bankrupt. I want to see them financially bankrupt.
Okay, so there's a lot of controversial art out there, and certainly not only with a focus on Jesus. But I can only imagine how these things would have been received if they were just there on the street, where people couldn't help but see them. Like if you were to walk around with pictures on them on a sandwich board, or a t-shirt. It would be a very controversial t-shirt. So this brings me to the king of controversial t-shirts.
Extreme music exists in parameters kind of beyond the accepted norm. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, to put it lightly. It definitely flirts and traverses with over boundaries or with boundaries that are sort of kind of unacceptable to most people. So kind of living outside the periphery of what is classed as normality, I suppose. That's hence the title Extreme.
Dani Filth, probably not his real name, is the singer and founding member of black metal band Cradle of Filth. Since 1991, the band has been producing sonic battery of the highest order and getting into scrapes along the way. And Dani is the proud owner of one of the most blood-chilling screams in the business. Black metal is a dark art, a form of heavy metal that blends the blistering pace of metal with orchestration. It can be both frantic and measured, ghastly and beautiful. And it can offend like only rock and its derivatives can.
It also deals with a lot of darker concepts and aspects of life, things that are notoriously taboo. It's going to come out of the wrong side of the proverbial grave, for some people at least. So I don't think it courts controversy as such. I think it's just by nature of the subject matter and everything around it. Extreme music is controversy, I guess, depending on who's listening to it or who picks up the vibe.
And imagery is a large part of the package with black metal. Bands frequently wear corpse paint, black and white face paint designed across their faces in varying designs. Think a more evil Kiss. And Cradle of Filth had some pretty evocative and provocative imagery, as Dani and I discussed on the phone recently.
The imagery you've used, I mean, some of it's very, very beautiful. And it's always darkly beautiful, even when it's done in such a way. It's a very pleasing image, despite when you think about it, it's bloody horrible.
There's definitely a juxtaposition between, let's say a marriage between extremes, love and death, sex and death, darkness and hope, etc., etc. It's very Catholic in that respect, I suppose. But ironically, when that shirt was designed, when we came up with the concept of it, we just fell about in fits of laughter because we wanted something. It wasn't supposed to be anything particularly irreligious as such. It was supposed to be sort of an anarchic statement. It was supposed to be something that was just like a big fingers up. We were sitting on someone's lawn, record company guy's lawn. We were about to go on tour with Emperor. This was back in 94 or 93 even, I think. Or was it 94? Might have been 94. God, it's so long ago now. We were just jostling around with ideas and somebody just sort of hit upon that. And we like I said, we fell about in fits of laughter because we were looking for something that kind of matched the image on the front, which was the nun masturbating. So we thought it was apt.
So yes, the t-shirt in question, as Dani described, is a picture of a nun masturbating on the front, and on the back, a lovely little 4-word slogan.
I'm picturing an idyllic British summer's day. You were probably drinking Pimm's with some strawberries. And then someone said, I know, Jesus is a cunt. Was there someone who said, whoa, that might be a bit too much, fellas? Or were you young enough?
It wasn't quite as cut and dry as that. We were throwing ideas around. But yeah, it was a quintessential English summer's day, in the little village just outside Chelmsford. But yeah, we did balk at it. But that's what made us laugh even more. And then we designed some shirts. And I remember having to take them to, I tried loads of places. Obviously, nobody was interested. And then eventually this people wanted to do them, said they were doing a very, very small village called Milton outside Woodbridge. So we had to kind of sneak him in, and he sneaked him out the back door, really, like a small print run of about 100.
Jesus is a Cunt came into the world in 1993. It would have a peaceful few years before 1997 saw the real start to its notoriety.
Terrorizer magazine, 1997. Rob Kenyon, arrested in June for wearing a Cradle of Filth Vestal Masturbation t-shirt, was found guilty of committing an act of profane representation under the 1839 Act by Bow Street Magistrates Court last month. An additional accusation of threatening behaviour was dismissed. Kenyon's lawyers will now proceed to the Court of Appeal in order to defer the case to the Crown Court, in order to prevent a precedent being set. Cradle of Filth were advised not to make an appearance by Kenyon's lawyers, but other Cradle of Filth fans did turn up in support.
They tried to introduce some statutory law, and they're trying to reintroduce it just for this case, and then the judge threw it out and said, well, you can't willy-nilly pick who you're going to prosecute using which law from the past, So, I don't particularly like that guy. There was a law. It was a bylaw in Oxfordshire in 1624, so let's bring that back in, prosecute him, and then we'll forget about that law again, which is obviously ridiculous.
Kenyon was fined £150, and that would be the first of many. Later that year, the band's own drummer, Nick Barker, would be arrested while en route to the ferry at Dover, as the band headed over to the Netherlands for the Dynamo Festival. The t-shirt had found the spotlight, or perhaps it had become a lightning rod.
Victory for sickos. A jury in Ocala, Florida, has refused to convict a man on obscenity charges for wearing a t-shirt that depicted a nun masturbating with a vile comment about Jesus on the flip side. No one will be shocked to learn that the decision was hailed by the ACLU and anti-Catholic bigots. News reports said that defence attorneys sought to convince the jury that the t-shirt was a comment on the hypocrisy that exists in organised religion. We took it as a comment on the sickness of the accused, the prostitution of the lawyers, and the perversion of the First Amendment.
That was an extract from an April 1998 article by the Catholic League in their periodical Catalyst, written by our old friend Bill Donoghue, who we heard from earlier complaining about Piss Christ. In June of the following year, he would again write on this topic.
Cradle of Filth aptly named. A rock band from England, Cradle of Filth, has released a t-shirt in this country that depicts a topless nun masturbating. It also features a vile insult to Jesus, calling him a vulgar name for female genitalia. The group typically sports satanic imagery. We have written to Mr. Fay Wolven, manager of Cradle of Filth, 115 Management, England, asking him to withdraw the t-shirt. It would be good if he heard from you too.
And right they did. As quoted by the NME that same month, the Catholic League had written to Fay Wolven, the band's manager, in no uncertain terms.
While Cradle of Filth's material regularly features satanic imagery, this is a low even for them. I would hope you would urge them, out of common decency and respect for the sacred beliefs of others, to withdraw this offensive item from distribution.
At the same time, a 2-day festival, the Milwaukee Metal Fest, was cancelled after it was revealed Cradle of Filth would be headlining. The sleazy t-shirt that was dreamed up on a fine summer's day was upsetting people the world over.
It caught people's attention. It really horrified people about, if you could put Hitler is, or Mussolini is, or Simon Cowell is. It just doesn't really strike the right chord globally, despite the fact that there are so many religions, and I think probably now Christ isn't at the top of them. It still struck quite a deep chord with people. Yeah, it's been all kinds of things. I think it's been in Tatler as part of a sort of display of radical, new fashion and stuff. Models wearing it and covered in blood on Halloween and stuff like that. So it's definitely had quite a deep-rooted effect.
And there were other arrests. Dale Wilson in Norwich in 2004. Adam Shepherd in Dorset in 2005. A 16-year-old male in Bagheera Waters, Australia in 2008. Alexei Vladimir Nikola in Brisbane, Australia in 2010.
When you hear about something like that, I mean, Nick, obviously, I know he was in the band, but as like a fan, does your blood freeze? Is it a guilty feeling or an outrage? Or
well, it was, it was kind of strange, yeah. And like I say, because of its longevity, there's been lots of cases like that over the years. And most of the time it's made me chuckle and think, yeah, good. This is the power of music and blah, blah, blah. And there's good sentiment, etc., etc. Makes people think. what I like best, the fact that it shocked people into, you can't say that. And then people suddenly realise, well, yeah, you can say it because it's a mythological concept. And aside from the swearing, which sort of brings it home, which is the thing that just goes, oh, God.
And retailers had a rough ride too.
NME.com, January 12th, 2001. The battle between Tower Records and the police over the sale of an obscene Cradle of Filth t-shirt took a twist yesterday, January the 11th, when police entered the shop in Glasgow for a second time demanding it be removed from sale. However, they were left red-faced when it became clear that the Jesus is a C-T shirt was in fact out of stock. Due to the publicity that followed the initial police raid last Friday and subsequent press conference held in front of the store by Glasgow's Lord Provost Alex Mosson, the t-shirts sold out.
Tower Records were not the only shop to feel the heat.
The Scotsman, Friday, 9th of November 2007. A shop owner charged with religious prejudice after selling an obscene t-shirt will not face trial. Daniel Moore, 45, sold the t-shirt to an undercover policeman. Minutes later, a team of 10 police officers raided his Edinburgh shop and he was charged with selling obscene material aggravated by religious prejudice. Moore insisted on his innocence during several appearances at Edinburgh Sheriff Court, and the Crown has now decided the case can be dealt with through an alternative to prosecution. The owner of Electric Cabaret in Forest Road was adamant he had only ordered the t-shirt after a number of his teenage customers requested it. Speaking from his shop yesterday, he said, "I don't think it should ever have gone as far as it did. I knew I was innocent all along. This has been a waste of money." He added, "The t-shirt is banned merchandise and my customers chose to order it. I told the guy that bought it that he shouldn't wear it on the street."
So that brings us to a point, doesn't it? There's no doubt that many will be offended by the shirt. Fairly so, I suppose. In just the way I don't want to see a spray-painted penis on a wall, I can understand why people don't want to see masturbating nuns in the supermarket queue, even on a t-shirt. I asked Danny how he felt about that. I probably wouldn't wear it now, not because I don't like it, but just because I don't know if I've eased off or something like that. But I mean, okay,
well, I would feel uncomfortable wearing it now. I would, to be honest.
So, I mean, but presumably at your gig, that's good, but going to the shops, you might second think it.
Well, I think that goes without saying, really, doesn't it?
I suppose it kind of does. Would you wear it in the line of business?
Probably not. No, I'm not really into wearing our own band shirts anyway. But I mean, I suppose that it's just publicly, I think the thing that bothers me about it, which I hold my hands up about it, I just find it. I don't care about most people really. Bit of misanthropist in that respect, but I wouldn't want my children seeing it. I would find that an assault on my liberty. Do you know what I mean? If I saw somebody else and I was with my kids and they were really young, but enough so they could read, and then they saw something like that, if we were at a bus stop or,
yes,
at a restaurant or something, yeah, that's the only time it would bother me. The rest of the time, teenagers upwards, I wouldn't be bothered. It's only children that I would, just because they don't need to be subjected to stuff like that.
But even in the confines of what you might call a friendly environment, not everyone was happy with the shirt.
Here's a show that's gonna kick some ass. Ozfest 2000.
The Ozfest is a hugely successful travelling festival that was founded by Sharon Osbourne, the famed manager and wife of Ozzy Osbourne, and someone who is no stranger to offence. She says she used to get her kids to defecate in boxes and then send them to people who had got on the wrong side of her. Seriously. But even she took issue with Cradle of Filth's Vestal Masturbation t-shirt. You're responsible for an image which has become so controversial that even Sharon Osbourne won't have anything to...
Even Sharon Osbourne.
Even Sharon Osbourne.
God forbid.
How did that make you feel when you were being censored by Sharon Osbourne?
Well, I don't know when that occurred, but she invited us to headline the B stage at the American Ozfest one summer, 2003, in fact. So it might have been around the same time. I think what it was that it was one of the shirts that was put forward for sale, and she said absolutely not.
Right.
And I suppose quite rightly so when you're on a massive touring circus like the Ozfest, which spanned 10 weeks and completely, crisscrossed the whole of the American market you're going to be playing some places that they're going to just find that offensive. White collar areas where they're going to find it very offensive.
And still it goes on.
Southland Times, New Zealand, February the 15th, 2012. Warren Craig Skill, 35, appeared before Judge Michael Turner on one charge of possessing an objectionable publication, namely Cradle of Filth garments.
It's the controversy that keeps on giving. It seems that each wave of outrage just spawns a whole new clamour to acquire it, and the seed is planted anew. It's a dirty shirt for sure. But, as with graffiti, its sense of raw power has earned it a place in culture. In her autumn 2009 collection, fashion designer Anne-Sophie Back took inspiration from the shirt, and in the London Fashion Week that year, a model could be seen on the runway sporting a long-sleeve black t-shirt with a very familiar-looking, very preoccupied-looking nun masturbating. For her version, Back had swapped the phrase Vestal Masturbation for God bless, dripping in red text, as if written in blood. And, also like graffiti, it's had a run-in with some spray paint too.
Which later decided to charge Mr. Skill.
I'm surprised at the longevity of the scenario, and that each year throws up yet another strange and wondrous case concerning the shirt. I mean, a couple of years ago you had a woman in New Zealand who attacked a display that was showing the design. For some reason, they've shown the shirt has appeared in lots of places that you wouldn't normally expect. I think it was shown in as part of an exhibition in the O2. This was an exhibition. I've got no idea what it was about, but the shirt was in there, and it was in an 18-only restricted area, and she spray painted the glass so people couldn't see it, which is ironic because she was trying to talk about freedom of expression, blah, blah, blah.
It was an art exhibition. In 2014, the Canterbury Museum in Christchurch, New Zealand, staged a show called T-Shirts Unfolding, displaying nearly 1,000 T-shirts from around the world.
Museums are supposed to be places that bring communities together, not places that foster division and intolerance or deliberately target large sections of the community with hateful and offensive acts like this.
From the Change.org website, a petition called Stop Dividing the Community, Remove the Hateful T-shirt.
To make matters worse, Canterbury Museum is funded by the rate-paying citizens of Canterbury, meaning that many of the very people who are having their religious beliefs obscenely ridiculed by this T-shirt are also being forced to fund this offence as well. Sign this petition to ask Canterbury Museum to act with more community responsibility and respect for its local funders by removing this T-shirt from its exhibition right now.
The petition was created by Brendan Malone and went on to amass over 10,000 supporters. But the exhibition went on regardless. The Vestal Masturbation shirt was included, though guarded in its own separate corner, with a warning sign before it and staff requiring to see your ID before letting you in. But the very fact that it was there, whether you had to elect to view it or not, was reason enough for outrage for some, and one woman took the matter into her own hands, spray painting the display to obscure it and offend no more. But don't worry, the shirt was housed in a Perspex case and hence white cleanable. If only all graffiti was that easy to remove. After years of having been dogged by his notorious T-shirt, I asked Dani if he ever got tired of it all, and if it ever infringes on living a normal life. You've been playing controversy, whether on purpose or not, for quite some time. As an older man now, do you still feel the same?
Well, sometimes you do, like I say, get out of the bed, wrong side of the proverbial grave, and you do feel, yeah, fuck this today, I feel really aggro. But not as a rule, really. I'm not saying this because it's been doused the fire because I'm 45 now. I still feel like I'm in early 30s, and people will say, they won't say I look like that, but they'll say that that's how I act. Probably younger, a bit like a sort of Peter Pan figure, really. Never grow up. So the age thing doesn't really come into it at all in that respect, because I've been, I would have been more aware of the scenarios surrounding it when my daughter was young. Now she's like 19 at the university. That sort of thing doesn't come into the equation.
Just in normal life, just picking the kids up from school or just at a barbecue and someone says, "Hi, Dani, what do you do for a living?" And you say, "Well, Dave, I'm in a band." And they say, "What band?" And then they Google you and then they just slowly back away.
Well, yeah, you never know about that. And yeah, just a few people that work. You know, we were trying to sell a house at one point, and we had people come around and look and that, and one of the estate agents got a bit funny about everything. It got funny because I've got a life-size Dalek, and as soon as he walked in, I pressed the button on it, and it, you know, so it went, exterminate. He didn't like that from the off. But yeah, you can't tell, really. You often forget that it's not, like I say, it's not everybody's cup of tea. A lot of people come into my house and go, wow, fucking hell, this is weird. We've got weird and wonderful things in here. It's a bit like a Victorian museum. And they just love it. And as soon as they find out about the band and never heard of this sort of music, they just in awe of it. I think, much like my grandma, who was very religious, she knew about the Jesus shirt, but she just had this kind of filter where it just sort of went over her head. She just kind of totally ignored it and everything the band stood for. And she'd proudly tell, you know, all her friends that I was in a band and look, Google it up and stuff like that. And they would all have this filter all of a sudden. Totally dissipated any cloud of doubt or contention. It just literally wipes it all away. Anything bad was just wiped away. But I was like, yeah, but it's even a band.
As Tizer said, spraying his art on the streets of London.
It depends what you're into, but that's the whole point of graffiti, is to make your environment look better. And that's, like any art, is debatable on what you like or what you don't like.
Yeah, okay. So when it was conceptualised, which sounds very posh, and as we all sat around at a board meeting, it held that appeal really on both counts, that it wasn't necessarily deemed as being irreligious, but more anarchic. So it was more about kicking back against the pricks. And then anything that came around because of it was also good. So, you know, yes, it's great because it causes controversy. It scares people. And I like that about it. I like the fact you can still do that, even in these times full of social media platforms and the death of music, that it still has the power to do that. And that's still, you know, happening 24 years on. But part of me also likes the fact that it is opening people's eyes up to, well, you know, you can say what you bloody well want about anybody. Life is a precious gift, and it's not there to be, you know, to have the ropes tautened around people and say, you can't do this, you can't do that. How dare people just suddenly assume to take over whole swathes of the world and people's opinions and that just because of some myth that happened thousands of years before they were born, allegedly. So, yeah, I think it works on both accounts, and I like it to work on both accounts. It's a double-edged sword.
If you could go back now, would you...
I think that'd be the last of my worries, is that shirt.
We'll never all agree on what art is. We'll never all agree on what is good art, or worthwhile art, or important, or valuable, or anything. Imagery is so immediate it cannot help but elicit reaction. And when that imagery is brought into the streets, painted on the walls, or printed across someone's chest, that imagery is going to find eyes it would not have had it only been presented in galleries or books or websites. So I don't know. I still don't think crudely rendered genitalia on the side of a supermarket or an enemy's phone number scrawled under promises of a good time behind a bus stop are art. But maybe they're not meant to be. Or maybe they are to some. Or maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe all that matters is the right to express it. I guess I want to be allowed to wear that t-shirt. And I want Tizer and his crew to carry on decorating the drab walls of drab streets. So I'll just have to accept things the way they are. And I'll realise that for everything my eyes find that they don't like, there's plenty that they do. Outrage, Outrage, Outrage featured interviews with Tizer, a street artist working in London, and Dani Filth, the singer of Cradle of Filth. Thank you very much to both of those gents for agreeing to be part of this. You can find Tizer's works on the streets of London. Go looking. And as for Dani, Cradle of Filth's latest album, Cryptoriana, The Seductiveness of Decay, is out now on Nuclear Blast Records. And we heard little snippets of its first song, Exquisite Torments Await, a little earlier on. And if you're in Europe, check out their website cradleoffilth.com for the tour dates towards the end of this year. The voice actors this episode were Marion Newman, Ed Feather and Robert Taylor. And it was written and produced by me, Andy Smith.